So they're making Star Wars movies still. What's with the dice? So in the new Star Wars movies that they've been making, Han Solo, popular smuggler, renegade, Harrison Ford, he's got these dice. And they're really important to him. And they keep focusing on these dice that Han Solo has. And he even shows them to Princess Leia, she's very attached to the dice. They're very important. And even Luke Skywalker, he uses force powers to force project dice. What's the deal with the dice? Allegedly, the dice are in the original Star Wars movies, but just briefly and just on the Millennium Falcon. They're just there. Never mentioned, not talked about, allegedly. I think the dice might be some evidence of a CIA mind control experiment. I think Star Wars was created by a government, or shadow government, or just not George Lucas. Okay, so they make a big deal about these dice. And what's one of the biggest thing about Star Wars over the years? It's that people get mad at Star Wars because they keep re-releasing Star Wars, the original old episodes and the new ones with special editions, upgraded features, all this new stuff they keep adding in, and they change things. And the fan base is so rabid that the fan base picks up on these changes and they go hard in some cases. Like, who shot first, Han Solo or Greedo? Well, in the original movie, Han Solo is at Mos Eisley Cantina with Greedo, and Greedo's all like, Han Solo, I don't like you. And then Han Solo blasts his ass with a blaster that he carries because he's a space smuggler who gets into hairy situations, and he carries a blaster for a reason. Well, later on, they changed it, and then Han Solo gets a super flexible neck, and Greedo shoots at Han Solo under the table before Han Solo shoots at Greedo. When he shoots at him, Han Solo dodges the bullet with his magic neck, just like, woof. And then he shoots Greedo. That way, for the kiddies, Han Solo's not a cold-blooded murderer, and he acted in self-defense. This upset a lot of people. And prompted t-shirts that say Han shot first, which is actually still wrong, because in the original version, Greedo never shot. So Han shot only. He didn't shoot first. He was the only one who shot. Okay. So, Star Wars, they update it, they change it. Usually it's blamed on George Lucas, and it's probably a good reason. What if Star Wars is a decades-long experiment? A series, a decades-long experiment that is, the purpose is to see how they can affect human memory, or worse, it could be a time travel experiment. Okay, so hear me out. Say that Star Wars keeps, they change things, and then you can't watch, it's so hard to watch the original versions of these movies. In fact, the very, very original Star Wars movie that you would have seen in theaters in the 70s didn't say Episode 4, A New Hope. It was just Star Wars. That copy of that movie is possibly somewhere. Who knows? I don't know. Hard to see. But I want to see that version of the movie. Because I've been rambling a little bit in circles. The dice. Are the dice in that movie? I think they added the dice later. The dice could have been added in the re-releases in the 90s with the plan that they're going to make future movies even farther down the line to explain the dice so they can point back at the dice and be like, see, they were there all along. And people are like, yeah, they were there all along, even though they weren't there all along. That's what they're trying to trick us into remembering things that were not the case. Or maybe they were the case, or not the case. There's this thing called the Mandela effect, and it's named after Nelson Mandela because some people think that Nelson Mandela, they remember that he died in the 80s and they have specific stories about it. And he didn't die in the 80s, he's still alive. Why do all these people remember something different? Time travel. Somehow, people in the shadows have been going back in time and changing things. And somehow, some of us are so anchored or connected to that original timeline, that we remember it how it used to be. Maybe we get that information from dreams. Maybe there was a melding of two dimensions. Speaking of, in regard to the Mandela effect, there apparently C3PO has a silver leg and the rest of his body's gold. I don't remember that. I've spoken to a lot of Star Wars fans. None of them remember him having a silver leg. Apparently, he had a silver leg the whole time. I remember the action figures and toys and everything. It was always gold, gold, gold. Maybe they all got it wrong. Maybe it was hard to tell that he had a gold, or maybe it was hard to tell that he had a silver leg. I mean, he does spend a lot of time on a desert planet, and the whole color scheme is bright and shiny, so it could be hard to see that he had a silver leg. Or, at some point, they changed it silver. They digitally changed it. They added it, did something with one of the editions of the movie. And you can't watch the older ones to see before. So they change it because in the 90s and early 2000s and stuff, George Lucas is making the new Star Wars movies. And he's making the new Star Wars movies. Who's in it? C3PO. What's C3PO look like in it? He's an unfinished robot with some silver metal plating. They decided they were going to do that. Then they give him a silver leg to make it seem like maybe that's connected somehow. I don't know. What if the original Star Wars, and the reason it was so great and so popular and everyone loved it, what if the original trilogy was actually not written and all done by well, I guess there are other writers on it, but it wasn't George Lucas's thing, and that's why it was good. But he was just the face man that the government team of people were like all putting together this awesome movie, and then they just needed a face. And like, hey, that guy who did American Graffiti or something, get him. And that's why when they made the sequels or the prequels, much later on, and George Lucas was the guy, the government wasn't as involved then, and then they let him do his thing, and that's why they weren't as good. But maybe that was the test. Like, first was their control experiment when they make the super movie. Then, like, you know what? Let's take this beloved franchise and let this guy, let him do the movie like he thought he did before. And everyone hated it. Although some of the stuff that happens in those prequels makes a hell of a lot more sense and is a far more cohesive in terms of a much broader story than a lot of the stuff that happened in The Last Jedi. Let's talk about time travel for a second. And I want to talk about it in kind of like an atheist, non-atheist type way. Like, you believe in God or you don't believe in God. Or a God or no God or whatever. If you believe that time travel will ever be possible, I got some things to say about that. If you believe they will ever invent time travel and have the capability of going back in time, then most likely it's already happened. Let's check it out. Here we are, No time travel. Here's the future. They invent time travel. What do you do if you invent time travel? You go through time. Say it's 100 years from now. So this is like, 100 years later from here. Well, they're not just going to go back in time 50 years or 25 years. They're definitely going to want to go see those dinosaurs. They're definitely probably going to want to go see what happened in all these disputed history things. So they're not going to stay here. They're not going to go here. They're going to go here before you, before us, before we existed. And we know about the butterfly effect. You do something small in the past, could change a whole bunch of things in the future. Well, obviously, stuff's happened in the past. Somehow something's changed. People have done something, which means anything in our life could have been affected by time travel. Unless we're the first timeline, we're the first time anyone's ever gone through time before anyone else has ever screwed anything up. We're the prime one, which means we necessarily can't get affected because we existed first. But let's say we're not the prime one and that they have affected things. That means our reality has been split off from the prime time. And most likely that's the case. And maybe that's what deja vu is. Maybe that's what these false memories are. They're echoes of those previous shattered, fractured timelines that we may be a part of, even now. Because if people, who knows what event split off our fractured timeline? It could have been something small. Maybe the government is changing Star Wars to gauge public opinion. It's a very, very popular science fiction movie. If they change something in Star Wars, say the Greedo shooting first or make Han shoot after Greedo, and they saw people didn't like it, maybe that tells them the public's okay with little bad boy. Maybe they want, I don't know. It's the Berenstein Bears. That's really all I want to get to. It's the Berenstein Bears. You show me whatever pictures you want, tell me whatever. It's not the Berenstain Bears. It's the Berenstein Bears.